I'm Fahad, and I'm going to torture you for the next 30 minutes about my project, which is called Croogo. English isn't my first language, so my apologies to you all for not being that great at speaking. So if you have any questions, please ask slowly. And you also get bonus points if you do not have a strong British accent. Okay. Just kidding there. So before starting, I would like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Fahad Ibnay Heylaal, usually known as Fahad19 online. I'm from Bangladesh. Currently, we're living in London, working at skylighted.com, which is a project management application. Our whole team is attending CakeFest today, so please come and say hi at the end of the day. Okay, so let's get started. What is this thing called Croogo? Well, it is yet another content management system, CMS in short. Then how come CakeFest is allowing another project's presentation here? Because it's powered by CakePHP. How did it start? It started as a personal tool for my personal and client projects. Until the beginning of 2011, I was a freelancer, and I was building small to medium-sized websites and used CakePHP for almost every project. And in almost all of those projects, I could find some common features. They included user authentication, authorization, custom pages, navigation menus, contact forms, and most importantly, an administration area where the client could manage everything himself. At the beginning, I wasn't actually reusing my code in a much elegant way. Rather, for each project, I was actually copying all the MVC files, put them together, and tried to just make it work. This wasn't a very good idea indeed, and soon I realized that I could have saved a lot of time if I could just put everything together, combine all the common features, so that I could start them as a starting point for all my apps. And I started doing it. After a few months, it started looking much better than I had originally expected. And I decided to make it open source so that it could benefit other CakePHP users. It would be a lie if I say that it only benefited the CakePHP users because it helped the project itself and helped it survive. If the CakePHP community didn't support it the way it did from the very beginning, I don't know if the project would have remained active till now. I get this question a lot. What does Croogo mean, really? The way it is spelled, it doesn't mean anything, really. I was having a hard time trying to find a good name, so I picked the name from a Bengali novel I had to read in my school assignment called Croogo. It was written by Muhammad Zafar Iqbal, and it was about a robot. I picked that name, changed the spelling a bit because I wanted something unique that Google didn't already know about. And luckily, the domain names are available, so I just purchased them. The day I registered the domain, Google returned only 26 results. Today, the number is in 6 figures. Okay. The project has been in beta for over a year. Lots of bugs and security issues have been fixed over this period of time. The next release is going to leave beta, and there are only a few tickets left on Lighthouse. You can grab the latest version from GitHub, and there are 2 ways to download it. One is where you download the zip archive, extract it, and just start using it. The zip archive already contains all the dependencies in it, so you don't have to worry about getting CakePHP, setting up all the files and all. The other is where you grab the latest code from the repository. The repository contains only the app directory only, so you need to set up all the CakePHP files yourself. Personally, I would suggest that you use Git because this way you have an option to update all the recent fixes in a smooth way. Otherwise, you would be delaying yourself upgrading for a few months until another release comes up. More details. Installation. Getting started with Croogo is really made very simple for any developer. All you need to do is to upload the files to your server, and the web-based installer will take care of the rest for you. After uploading everything to your server, just visit your site and it will open up the installer. I think Ando has already showed you the installation example, so I'll just talk about it. Step 1 is of installation will ask you to provide you with database information so that it could connect to the database. And step 2 is about generation of tables and inserting some basic data so that you could get up and running quickly. After it has done all the database operations, it will show you a link to the admin panel and with also your login information. The whole installation process is carried out by a single plugin called install, and it will also give you an option to delete all the installation files when it has completed its process. The good thing about this plugin is it works standalone. So if you are an open source developer and using CakePHP, you can use the plugin yourself and help package your software with it. The installation process should not take you more than a minute or two, really, but I prefer calling it the less than 5 minutes installer. Content. It's all about content, really. And they can be of many types in your website. Pages, articles, blog posts, gallery images, the list can go on for more. But Croogo tries to cover only the the most needed features right out of the box, but also giving you an option to extend them. Content is organized in different types in Croogo. In a default installation, you will have 2 primary content types: page and blog post. A page is like content that hardly changes in your website. A perfect example would be an About Us page. The other one is blog post. So I think it is pretty obvious to you all what a blog post is. So this content type will let you have a blog in your website with also an option of having threaded comments. There is also another content type in Croogo that is called node. So if you do not see your content fit in either as a page or a blog post, you can use this content type. But you also have an option of creating your own content types in Croogo via the admin panel. So you're never forced to use the content types you are provided with in a default installation. In Croogo's terminology, up to version 1.3, every piece of content is called a node. But this will change in version 2.0, and I will come back to it at a later stage in this presentation. Taxonomy. As content grows in your website, you do need a way of categorizing them. That's when the idea of taxonomy comes in. Basically, it means categorization of your content. How often have you visited a blog that doesn't have its posts categorized or tagged? Croogo has it covered here. Before using its features, you do need to know 2 key terminologies here. One is term, the other is vocabularies. Think of these category names in a blog: PHP, JavaScript, and CSS. Each of these items can be called a term, and you call a collection of these terms a vocabulary. For example, in the last example that I said, PHP, CSS, and JavaScript, you can put all of these items in a vocabulary called languages, maybe. And as you create the terms and set of vocabularies, you can associate these with your content as you create them. And each vocabulary can be maintained in a tree-like style, like in a hierarchical style. So it can be also used later for menu generation and all. By default, Croogo comes with 2 vocabularies. Categories and tags. I hope these should be enough to help you get started with. Users and permissions. Croogo uses CakePHP's ACL for its role-based permission management system throughout the application. Users belong to a role, then roles are given access to controller actions. So if you have a pages controller with an action, say display, that action can be given to one or more than one roles, and you can all manage it from a nice and usable user interface from the admin panel. With controller actions, there is a problem that you may be updating your code manually. So there could be like more actions added, some actions removed. So how do you manage this? Croogo has a built-in echoes generator. So you can hit a generate actions button and it will search all your controller actions and place it all in a table. So you can just click them and assign them permissions to your roles. By default, there are 3 roles in Croogo. Admin, they are basically the website administrators. Then registered, who are registered users in your website, but not usually admins. Then there is public, who are visitors to your website and not logged in. You are, of course, able to create as many roles as you want. Extensions. Extensions in Croogo allow you to extend the application. And the main goal is to let them extend the application without having to touch the core files. There are 2 ways you can do it: themes and plugins. Themes are basically one extra layer on top of your views. They help you customize the appearance of your website, the look and feel of your website to give you a unique look. And they can all be activated, uploaded, and managed from the admin panel. There are some themes, already community contributed themes in the wiki, so you can just go and download them and upload them, and it should work right out of the box. Now to plugins. Like CakePHP's documentation says, plugins are like they're a standalone application on their own. But in Croogo, plugins are given a bit more power. They need to be activated from the admin panel first before they can function properly. I remember once tweeting about how much I would love to see CakePHP plugins having bootstraps and roots. And Jose Lorenzo asked me to submit an RFC ticket for that. He was kind enough and have this feature added in CakePHP 2.0, so thanks for that, Jose. But in CakePHP 1.3, plugins didn't have bootstrap or roots. This was added in Croogo. Croogo plugins still got something more to offer. There are situations when you need some task to be performed when a plugin is activated or deactivated. I believe you wouldn't expect your website administrators to go ahead and create all the MySQL tables before adding a plugin. In that case, you do need a few more callbacks. Plugins in Croogo have an option to have activation class. If your plugin's name is example, then your activation class would be placed under the config directory of your plugin and be called example activation. It consists of 4 methods. Before activation, so if you return true here, the plugin will be installed and carry on with its process. Then on activation, this is where your code goes, for example, say, generating the MySQL tables maybe. Then before deactivation, which is similar to before activation, just that it carries on with deactivating the plugin. And then there is on deactivation, where your logic goes for maybe dropping the MySQL tables. The power of plugins do not just come in from bootstrapping or having roots. They needed something more to become more pluggable. When I open sourced Croogo, I wanted people to use this software and also contribute to this project. And by contributions, I don't necessarily mean direct commits to the core. I wanted people to have their own freedom of developing their own themes and plugins that can be used with Croogo easily. And that's when I decided to have something called hooks. So what is this thing called hook? Hooks are basically ways plugins can integrate themselves to the main application without requiring any modifications to the core. They are set from plugin's bootstrap file. And so imagine you want to perform a task every time a blog post is created. And you want this to be done by a new plugin called example. So thinking from a CakePHP developer's point of view, you would go ahead and maybe attach a new behavior to your model, in this case, node model for content. and the behavior would be doing something from its after save callback. But this would require you to modify the node model file that we don't want to do. Then how can we make it possible? We hook the plugin's behavior to the model. In your plugin's bootstrap file, you would be adding this line of code. Croogo hook behavior, node, which is our model name, the model class, and example.example, which means the example behavior of your example plugin. This way, every time node model is instantiated, it will have the example behavior attached to it. There are more hooks for components, helpers, admin navigation, tabs, and you can find all the information about them in the Croogo wiki. Version 2. If there is one thing certain about it, it will be migrated to CakePHP 2.0. But you guys have to wait for a few more months before I can show you something working. Development will start as soon as version 1.3 leaves beta, which is likely to happen in a few weeks' time. There will be some changes in terminology. As I have told you before, in Croogo, every piece of content is called a node, but this seems really too technical to end users. Things like this will change. Plugins in CakePHP 2 have seen a lot of improvements, and Croogo will take full advantage of that. And it is very likely that it will have a plugin-based architecture in future. That's all I can say about version 2.0 for now. Who uses Croogo? Anyone here? Oh, that's a few numbers. Quite a number of websites, really, ranging from governments, non-profit organizations, TV channels, restaurants, universities, and, well, some lingerie brands. Let's see a few brands using it. Hyundai. I think they are a car manufacturer. They use it in one of their websites. Then the Romanian government, they use it too. Calzedonia, it's a fashion brand. If you go to London and hit Oxford Circus, you would see their shops. I think you have heard of this TV channel, MTV. They use it too in one of their websites. The community. One of the many advantages of basing your project on a popular MVC framework like CakePHP is that the project gets attention from the framework community itself. A very smart man named Mark Story once said, "Getting people involved in open source is not as easy as appointing them," which is very true indeed. But I have been trying to keep everything as open as possible from the very beginning so that people could participate. The code was moved to GitHub from Google Code the day Croogo was released, and thanks to Savant for directing me that way. With contributions coming in from 20+ developers, there's a Lighthouse account that was set up for reporting bugs. There's a Google group with 300+ members, which is pretty active, and people are starting to helping each other. It has already been translated in 12 different languages, with 2 more to be added soon. Currently, the number of GitHub repositories of community-contributed plugins and themes is over 70. I hope contributions like this will go only up in the coming days as more designers and developers get involved. Some last-minute words now. Croogo was not developed for the sake of developing yet another CMS. It was developed for a purpose to fulfill the needs of a CakePHP developer, that is me, which now I can say is a need for many developers right now. And it is here to stay. CakePHP is already a very popular framework. I don't need to say that. But still, with all my humbleness, I want to say that next year, when I see you again at CakeFest, maybe I can say that Croogo has given rise to CakePHP-based websites by a significant rate. That was all from me today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or if time is an issue now, meet me later today. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
How are you tracking who is using it? Is it just from talking to people and finding out, or do you have some mechanism to track?
No mechanism to track it. Actually, I'm just dependent on Google Analytics. So every time someone clicks the Powered by Croogo link on the bottom, only then I know it.
Okay.
The thing with open source is nobody tells you they're using your software. Yes?
I suppose an obvious question would be, why would somebody pick Croogo over something maybe more established like web-based, for example?
That's a very good question, really.
Benefits do you offer?
I started using CakePHP, and before that I was using other CMSs. But after I used CakePHP, I was really very happy with my code. It was more maintainable, more easy to read, and when I was handing my code to someone else, the developer could pick it up more quickly. So if you go for these kind of things, I think you definitely want to go ahead with CakePHP. And for that, there are not many options really, because WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, and all others, they are not framework-based. So if your development is mostly framework-based, I think you'd go ahead with it. And it is also pretty much usable. Yes?
I think a pretty common use case in a lot of businesses and applications is that you need a really good way to manage a lot of content, but that's just a small part of your application.
Yeah.
And usually there's two approaches. You just build your own content management system inside your application, or you kind of add a bunch of plugins to a content management system to make it do something that it wasn't built to do. So does Croogo have any way to kind of plug into other Cake applications rather than it being its own Cake application?
Right now, no. But version 2 is likely to have a plugin-based architecture, like I said. So maybe from then on, you can plug it in more quickly and easily. Yes?
Coming from Switzerland, we have this term that everything needs to be at least bilingual. Do you have some kind of support here, like having notes of different languages?
Yes, there's a translate plugin built into Croogo. So if you just enable it, you can translate all your content in any languages you want. Okay, that was all then. Thank you.